Let's look at the Punnett squares. This past week, you were working on Punnett square problems. And remember, they are to illustrate genetic crosses between our parents. So down here is one of our examples of a Punnett square. So we use them to predict possible genotypes resulting from one of the crosses. So we have this axis of a grid when we make this X across. We have our boxes that show our genotypes. Remember, those are our letter combinations. We can determine then the ratio of the genotypes in each of the generations we have available. Here is an example from Gruver Mendel when he has his pea plants. So we have a hybrid here, a capital T and a lowercase t, one T here, the other. Those refer to again as the gametes. We have the dominant allele, the capital T, the recessive allele, the lowercase t, and then we fill in the squares on the inside. Those are our possible offspring. So when we fill it in, each box represents 25%. When we have 25%, we fill them all in, and we can figure out what the possible offspring are. The one down here they have listed points to this 25%, lowercase t, at homozygous. This one over here is pointing, saying heterozygous. It has a capital T and a lowercase t. When you have this one here, capital T, lowercase t, and this one here, capital T and lowercase t, that is two 25%. Add them together for 50%. And then we have a capital T up in this top left-hand corner at 25%. We have all seen the prefix mono, mono meaning one. Hybrid is when we have two different traits looking at one part. So we have a homozygous dominant X homozygous recessive. So we have right here a purple flower. Down here we have a white flower. So just like in Gruver Mendel's experiment, he was looking at the tall pea plants, he also looked at another trait with the flowers. So when he has the homozygous dominant parent with the capital F, and he has the homozygous recessive parent with the lowercase f, he fills in each of the squares with the offspring of a capital F and a lowercase f. He finds out that the genotype is 100% capital F, lowercase f, and the phenotype is 100% purple. So the last page we saw a homozygous dominant and we crossed it with a homozygous recessive. This one is a heterozygous and we're going to cross it with another heterozygous. So what we did was we took one of the offspring from the first one and now we're going to allow it to self-pollinate. This is exactly what Gruver Mendel did. So he has one offspring that is a pure capital F. Here's one that is another hybrid, a second another hybrid, and wouldn't you know, we have one who actually shows a white recessive flower. What this means is that the trait comes back in the next generation. When we move on, we can have, when we have that white flower cross with a purple flower, and again you have to look at what in particular they are. So we have a homozygous recessive and we have a heterozygous parent on the other side. We will have a 50% of having white flowers and a 50% chance of having the purple flowers. So, what would happen if we crossed a whole bunch of different things? Well, we do test cross, and a test cross is between organisms with an unknown genotype and an organism with a recessive phenotype. Look at these kittens. They look too cute. So, now that was a monohybrid, we also have what's called a dihybrid. Now, if you were able to take one of the extra credit papers, you would have seen that we gave you an opportunity to try a dihybrid. And this is when you cross two different traits. So this is a little bit more difficult This is when you have two different traits looking at one thing. So here we have Y's and R's. Down here we have Y's and R's. And you have two different physical traits that you are trying to figure out at one time. It does get a little complicated, but as we talked about with our eyes are found on more than one place. So this is where you have different shades of brown, different shades of green and hazel, and where you're going to get that blue colored iris. So when he looks at everything and we have the dihybrid, we have one law called the law of independent assortment. Don't worry about it. You do not need to know it. We also have to make sure that we understand the word probability, which is the likelihood that a particular event will happen. And so, as you can see with the money, it's all right there within such an event.